Thank you. I am extremely passionate about agricultural safety. WorkSafe for me has been a panacea for all my girly things of wanting to make the world a better place to be in. It was a big surprise to me to find then that not always is WorkSafe everyone's best friend. And I guess there's two questions that I get asked when I arrive at a farm. Why are you here and how soon can you leave? For me, to be involved in this very important conversation that we're having today about agricultural safety is a personal journey. As a farmer, a lot of the people that I talk to have been involved or aware of fatal or serious incidents in their industry. There have been people that I have known who have died. In fact, the first fatal incident I went to was a guy I used to buy my hay from, and it was quite confronting to have to deal with that. I always say to people, safety is not a destination. It's not something that you go out and buy a system. You fill out a few documents, you do some inductions, you get some policies, and that's it, you're done. Safety is going to get away from you. So it's something that you're following every single day that you're at a workplace. It's something that you're constantly checking in on, and you're checking in on the people who are involved. So when I go out to a farm, that's my mindset, to engage people into that thought process, is that safety is something that you constantly have to be aware of. It is the job. It's not a thing that you can set aside. It's not a thing that you can get around to. It is the job. And all of the systems that you have in place and all of the things that you do must be safety focused. When I arrive at a farm, there's often a lot of aggression in regards to the fact that WorkSafe is here to tell you how to run your business. We have no idea that what it is that you do, and that we're there to persecute you and take away your farm from you. That's a bit of a shame because I am passionate. So when people say, look, we don't trust you, I say, that's fine. And they say, well, we don't like you. And I say, that's fine, but do you like and trust each other? Because that's why I'm here. That's the message of safety, is we're looking out for each other. This is personal, this is people's lives as well as livelihoods. So in that regard, WorkSafe has got together, there's been some very in-depth conversations with people in industry and farmers on the land as to what we can do together being the operative, to increase the value of farm safety out in the regions. And what I generally find is the closer to the coast I am, the better the systems. The further I get away from the coast, some people haven't even heard of us. In fact, I did have one farmer say to me recently, we have insurance, love, and I'm not interested in what WorkSafe's got to offer. So while I'm trying to spend time out there and having these conversations, what we've come up with is a bit of a plan for those who are further from the coast and potentially haven't gotten started on our safety journey, is that to produce a very basic document, something that you can use with your families. This is not aimed at corporations. This is not aimed at the big wigs who already have great systems in place. This is aimed at the farmer who goes, I guess we better do something. And so this is what we have been producing. Green button, is it, Andrew? The one at the top? Thank you kindly. So the document that's been put together, and there's been quite a large team of people working on that, is called The First Steps to Farm Safety. And what we've done is we've isolated out what are the major risks for people in agriculture. Where are the serious injuries and the fatal incidents happening? And when we talked about breaking down previously, one of our speakers talked about breaking down where those injuries and fatal incidents are happening. We've gone and done that for you. Now, part of the risk assessment process is that you yourselves at your workplaces are meant to identify where those risks are. We're here to help you to do that, and FarmSafe and people like Dave as well are all hand in hand helping you. So don't feel like you have to head into this blindfolded. This is something that we are all on the same page and we all want the same outcomes. So this document is made up of two parts, and part one is about helping you to set up a fledgling safety system. So the expectation from WorkSafe is if you haven't had a system, that when I come to visit you, that you've actually gone and bought one and now you're compliant. Too many farms that I've been to, and I say to them, do you have a safety management system? And they say yes. And they very proudly pull down a couple of volumes from the shelf and hand it to me. And I open it up and voila, not a pen has touched a page. So they actually haven't done anything with their system. And that can be potentially quite dangerous place for a farmer to be, because if you have a serious incident or you have a fatal incident, when our investigators come on and ask you about that system, if there's something within that document that could have prevented that from happening, it's not going to look great for you that you never bothered to open it to make an attempt to prevent that incident. So when we're talking about getting systems, start small, start with something that is achievable. The legislation talks about you having a system. It doesn't say how big it is, how much money you have to spend, how many workers you have per dollar of investiture into this, but it does talk about having something. So if you can get something started, this is a great place to start for you. Part 2 covers the key hazard areas, and they're the ones I'm going to be touching on in this slideshow today. So one of the major blockages, and we saw an inverted triangle a little earlier. We're talking about the hierarchy of controls. Here is the hierarchy of, I'm going to get round to that. And this is what I find that all of us are a little bit guilty of, is that we go through this process of why we haven't done it yet, or why we never got started, or why it was somebody else's fault, or why I'm just checking out and you can't make me do otherwise. So that usually takes me an hour to get through all of that on a farm when I first visit. But the important thing is, as I say, we started a conversation about safety. So for a lot of farmers, I find, and I'm speaking in general here about some of the farmers who haven't had contact with WorkSafe previously, and they're the ones I will often look for because they need to be brought into sharp focus about what the expectations are of the law. I'll say to them, safety is like a young kelpie. So while you've got that young kelpie on a lead at your feet, you can keep an eye on it. You can teach it some stuff, you can be involved in what it's doing, and you can make sure it's doing what you need it to do. The moment you take your eyes off that and you let it go, safety gets away from you and it's out the back and it's killing your chickens and it's chasing your sheep. And they go, I understand that now. It's a good analogy, and it is all about management. So safety has to be managed, and it does take planning. So one of the biggest areas of incidents, and this is a global thing, but I'm specifically talking about WA here, tractors. That picture of the unguarded PTO is something that I see probably on 80% of the farms I go to. Tractors that not necessarily in service all the time, but they do get used. And it's always a case of, we only use that for certain times of the year, or that's a seasonal tractor. And so then I talk to them about seasonal accidents and seasonal getting your arms ripped off, and how we really don't cut it that way anymore. And you might have gotten away with that in the past, but we don't want to look at getting away with stuff anymore. We want to look about implementing proper plans. Guarding of PTO is another thing that I see that they've bought some PTO guards. Someone drove over it with a tractor. Someone else cut some bits out, so it's much easier now to grease it up. And we now have insufficient guarding. So with your tractors, it's really important that you do go through the process of checking them and maintaining those checks. And it doesn't hurt to have a good blast down once a year, a proper degreasing to actually check for things like chassis cracks and wear before you grease her up and get her back out again. Quad bikes, they are not my favourite thing. If it was up to me, I would go around, collect them all and crush them. But I know you love them and I know you want them out there. I did come across a farmer who bought no less than 19 before the changeover that the federal government implemented for quad bars, which is the thing at the back of that particular quad bike, if you haven't seen one before. The quad bar is there to protect you in the event of a rollover. Will it save your life? We don't know. We haven't had enough evidence in regards to that. But if it gives it a jolly good try, that's got to be a positive thing. But I guess the biggest thing that I see with quad bikes is people not wearing helmets. And I say to them, do you not look at that panel? And it's generally by your left knee, which says, if you're going to operate this, put a helmet on. And they go, but I did a risk assessment. So the law says I can do a risk assessment about that. I say, does it indeed? Please explain. And they'll say, but I was only going from here to there. Or I was just doing less than 30 Ks. Or I'm moving pipes. So I'm off and on, opening gates and the like. So I don't have to wear one. So that's great. So when someone comes off, hits a fence post, goes down a pothole and rolls that thing and gets a serious head injury, I guess that's okay, is it? It's sobering that people's minds will go down that way and they'll come up with some kind of a plan as to why they don't have to be safe. But when I say to them, look, the manufacturer of this particular quad bike probably spent in excess of $20 million on the design of this thing. And so if he's done a risk assessment for you, isn't it a great idea to probably consider that he's the expert and potentially you may not be? So if you have to remove your helmet for certain activities on a quad bike, probably using a quad bike is not the vehicle for you for that task. Side-by-sides are not the panacea that quad bikes used to be. They are not the replacement vehicle that's going to now save you from all mobile plant deaths. We are starting to see more incidents with side-by-sides, and when we look at the demographic of the people who had quad bike incidents, often young, virile and strong men who want to see what it's made of and what it can do, we're getting those same people operating the side-by-sides, and we're obviously getting the same types of incidents. If you are going to have a side-by-side at your workplace, please read the manual. Many of them, in fact, probably most of the later model ones now require you to wear a helmet. Bad news for all farmers, you don't get away with it that easily. There we go again with the helmet conversation. The helmets are there because if the thing goes over on its side, it rolls like a brick. It's a hard, fast slam onto its side. If your head's involved in hitting either the rollover protection or the ground, a serious head injury will ensue, and you don't want that at your workplace. So if you are using a side-by-side, please be aware that helmets are a really great measure to protect the head. Falls from heights we've seen a lot of in agriculture. I've heard of a lot of risk assessments that farmers have done in regards to working at height. Hold on tight. I wouldn't get up there if I was scared of heights. Or I'm the older person on the farm, so I do the dangerous climbing stuff so that my son doesn't go to jail because I'm going to die anyway. These are not risk assessments that WorkSafe really love, and we don't like to hear those. But with a bit of planning, you can work safely at heights. If in doubt, if you are that little bit older and you can't jump a puddle anymore, there are contractors out there who can do a lot of this work for you, and you don't have to get on a roof. You don't have to be at an age where it's now difficult or unsafe, and you don't have to send your little boy up there to clean the gutters on the shed for you. So plan, please, for falls from heights. Once you've fallen, it's not the fall that gets you, it's what hits you at the bottom. Machinery and guarding. These are machines that I have seen at workplaces, and the list of excuses as to why the guards are off are innumerable. Many, especially in Broadacre, will remove guarding because the machinery that they're using, especially harvesters, are designed for European or American conditions and don't necessarily tolerate the very high heat and the extremely long days that Australian Broadacre farmers will put in. So oftentimes they will remove guarding. And they will do that so that we don't get a build-up of flammable substances, which when a bearing fails, because I forgot to change them before season, starts a big fire and gets you to meet all your new neighbours. Guarding is there for a reason, and a lot of plant requires the guarding to prevent injury, but also to operate safely. If you have blowers and things, the guards are designed to assist the blower to blow out those chaffs. So read your manuals, get your head around the safety side of guarding, and make sure that guarding is maintained and kept on site. Electrical hazards, I won't dwell on these. Pat's pretty much covered all of those. But an important thing, I guess, for me is that if you don't have a certificate, you aren't an electrician. Not in any way, shape or form are you an electrician. I don't care how far you live from the nearest electrician. I don't care whether he's busy up until next June. You're not an electrician. Don't stick your finger in there. Or you might be meeting Pat, or Pat might be meeting your family to explain what happened to you. Hazardous chemicals, once again, we've just covered those really well. The things that I tend to see is spillages, things being decanted in containers and no one can remember what it was. Things being decanted into containers that used to hold other chemicals, and I forgot to write on it what it was, but I'm sure I'll be able to work it out if I sniff it or taste it. And things that have been left on farm for donkey's years, and we're just holding on to them in case there's an apocalypse and we may have to go back to DDT and the like. So please manage your chemicals. They are fairly insidious in that a lot of chemical injury isn't apparent for quite some time. So it may not be that you've got an immediate chemical burn or an ingestion into a system. It may be that it's silently eating away at your insides in the form of cancers and the like. They're very much preventable, a chemical injury. And if you're not aware and you haven't done enough training, then please, the courses are available and very, very affordable. Children and visitors are a great concern. We have had a lot of injuries to children. A lot don't get reported through the WorkSafe channels because technically they're not an employee, so people don't like to tell us stuff. The days of taking the bonnet off the old ute and dragging it around behind the tractor for a 21st with a carton of beer and a few fireworks, they are over. This is a workplace. Would you go to the bank and do that? Would you go into our workplace and do that? You wouldn't do it. They are things that we laugh about, things that we talk about. We scratch our head about those type of activities, but we don't maintain and continue to do them. Your children do not belong in the back of your ute. I don't care that you're driving really carefully. I don't care that you're going really slowly. I don't care that it's fun and they want to come down on school holidays and participate this at your farm. It's a no-no. We don't do it anymore. Visitors are another thing, and people say to me, what do you mean I have to induct my grandmother? And I say, well, I'm not requesting you to induct her to drive the tractor unless she particularly has any towards that and it's something you would like her to do and she's capable. But if she is coming onto your farm, what I would like to see is that she's aware of the types of hazards that could be there. So if there's an alternative access that she might be using, it's a safe access. If she's taking the kids out for a picnic down by the river, that she can do that safely. So the levels of induction for your visitors must be commensurate with the type of people who they are. We're not saying this is a long, drawn-out thing once again, but please do something rather than the nothing we often see. And the other people who do come onto properties, your contractors and the like, need to be inducted. Just letting your vet have carte blanche and saying the sheep's up in the top paddock, just drive out there, and if you go around the back of the dam, there it is. Having some kind of a plan for him so he knows the area of your farm, safe places to be, is very achievable, and you can induct people like your vet prior to them coming to the farm so they can bring that documentation to assist them to move around your property. Other people who may come onto your property might be people like Sequa, who you cannot stop. I get a lot of calls from farmers saying, can I stop them from coming on my property? No, that's the bottom line. And with that, you do need to make safe passage for them. So chucking your bull in the paddock and not putting up signs to say that he's there in the hope that this might teach them once and for all not to come on your property isn't going to work for you. They have their own act. They are allowed to enter your property. They are even allowed to store equipment on your property. Have a conversation with them. Try that aspect and you'll find you get a lot further and you can make sure it's safe for everybody. When we're talking about psychosocial hazards, it's a big word and a lot of farmers are very scared about what that might look like for them. In fact, one farmer said to me, is this about keeping people bloody happy, is it? Because I don't know where to start with that. I said, no, it's not about particularly keeping them happy, sir, but it is about making sure that the workplace is set up to not add additional stress, to not expose them to fatigue, and to make sure that there is a system in place where if they are being bullied or they're being harassed or the like, that they've actually got a system for bringing that to your attention and managing that. Of course, the best systems for psychosocial hazard is prevention. So talk to people about things like what you wear at a workplace, how you talk to each other at a workplace, how you engage with people at a workplace, and how you have conversations about different culture or government or anything at a workplace. Workplace conversations do need to be moderated to make sure that people feel comfortable. We have a lot of CALD workers or culturally and linguistically different workers, and we need to be mindful that we require them to be here in WA and we need to make them feel welcome. So that's where we start with psychosocial health, and we've got some great inspectors to help you if you have more questions. Plan for a safer farming future. It's not that hard to get started. When we talk about the documents, they are available. There are a huge range of systems, and there's a lot of people in this room who are available to help you at any level. We've got some highly technical people at WorkSafe in Dangerous Goods who can help you with some intricacies of things. There are other agencies, if you don't want to put your hand up, that you can use an industry body, for example, to pose a question on your behalf to WorkSafe, and then you're not identifying yourself as an individual or as a company. We are currently updating the agricultural checklist, which FarmSafe talked about just now, so that will be available very soon, and I highly recommend people Oh, it's up there already. Thank you. Highly recommend people go and have a look at that free checklist and then utilise that for yourselves. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Remember, friend, not foe. Well, I hope I know the answers.
Beeping at me and I need to get it to stop. Just ignore the beeping. I can't see how to stop it.
Oh.
No, well, I have pressed stop and done. We'll just pretend it's not happening. Just a couple of quick questions for you. This was actually came up during Laurie's presentation, but can you request WorkSafe to come to a farm to do an inspection, and what does it cost?
Okay. Yes, you can request us to come to a farm and we can walk around with you and have a look at that. I've been doing a lot of that lately. I've also been doing a lot of working with agricultural stakeholder groups. For example, Women in Farming, where we've talked about what I would look at when I come to a workplace and helping them to get prepared before I get there. I'm also working with the dairy industry very closely at the moment. So rather than me go to a workplace and write you 50 notices because you had no idea what you're doing wrong, they're working with us now to get ahead of me coming to get you mostly compliant, and then I'll come along and help top up on that. So working together to get these outcomes is fantastic, and I'm more than happy to come along. I have coffee, white and one. Let's have a conversation about safety. Thank you.
And one more. Are chains mandatory on PTO covers?
Chains mandatory on PTO covers? Yes, they are. Yeah, the chain is there to prevent the spin. Just because you've got a cover on a shaft, that protects the shaft, but that will spin, and it's the spin that's the danger. That's the moving part that can catch you, albeit it may spin slowly. And I know farmers say, oh, look, I can put my hand on it and I can stop it from spinning. The chain is being designed by the manufacturer to stop the spin. Please use the chain. If the chain's gone, guess what? You buy another chain, put it on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.